On the scene for us in Damascus. Fred, thank you. And Senator Rand Paul, the Republican from Kentucky, is joining us now in the Situation Room. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Glad to be with you, Wolf.
On Syria, what should the United States be doing? 60,000 Syrians have been killed. Hundreds of thousands are now refugees. It looks like the slaughter is continuing. What should the U.S. do?
You know, I think war's a horrible tragedy. When you talk about famine, pestilence, and horrible and gruesome death, it comes when you have war. It's not always easy, though, to choose sides, you know, when things are murky. There are about 1 million Christians in Syria, and they came to Syria because they were worried about the government that we allowed to become installed in Iraq. So now you have 1 million Christians in Syria, and they've actually been somewhat protected by Assad because Assad was a minority within a majority of Muslims, but he protected the Christians. So they have mixed feelings. The rebels, many of them are al-Nusra, are related to al-Qaeda or radical elements of Islam. And so I'm not so sure I want to give weapons to people who really may be more anti-Israel than the current government and more anti-Christian than the current government. So sometimes, as difficult as it is, it just may not be the best thing to side with people who may turn out to be worse than the current government.
Any humanitarian initiatives the U.S. should be undertaking?
Well, you know, I think anytime people are distraught and in such turmoil, humanitarian assistance is something that people should consider, whether it should be voluntary or orchestrated by a government. I really just think we shouldn't be involved with arms is something that I'm adamant that we shouldn't be giving arms. And one of the questions I asked Secretary Clinton the other day is, are we orchestrating arms sales from Libya to Turkey and then on to these warring factions? Now, the official administration says we're not, but a week before our ambassador was killed, there was a ship that left Libya with arms, and they've actually interviewed the captain of this ship who talked about the weapons going to rebels, some of whom were bickering over who got the weapons and who didn't get the weapons.
You delivered a major foreign policy address today over at the Heritage Foundation, a well-thought-out speech on a whole bunch of national security issues. Why now? Why did you decide to do it? Because you knew that it was going to jumpstart the speculation. You want to establish foreign policy credentials for a possible run in 2016.
You know, I've just joined the Foreign Relations Committee. I wanted to spell out what my vision is for our foreign policy. I think it's a unique position, and it's one that I think needs to be expressed. We often have sort of two polar extremes, and really just one for the most part, that we're everywhere all of the time. The other extreme is that would be nowhere any of the time, and that would be isolationism. I think there's a more realistic approach that's somewhere in the middle, and it would involve active policies such as containment. So I talked a lot about George Kennan, who I think is maybe one of the most famous diplomats of the last century, thought to be one of the chief architects of the ideas of containment, which kept peace for 70 years. And I think there's still some of that may apply to radical Islam, in that radical Islam is a widespread ideology, it's antithetical to freedom, and I think it has to be opposed at various parts around the world. But I don't think the standard approach of having 100,000 troops in countries is really the approach that we need.
Because you have a very nuanced position when it comes to Iran and its nuclear ambitions, and I want you to explain it. The president says there should be no policy of containing a nuclear Iran. The policy must be preventing Iran from becoming a nuclear power. Where do you stand?
Well, see, I don't completely disagree with that. I do think that there should be some strategic ambiguity, though. I think that we should never announce that we're going to contain a nuclear Iran. But I also think it's unwise to say, oh, well, we're never going to contain a nuclear Iran. I think being silent on some issues is better, because there is a chance one day we wake up like we did with North Korea, like we did with China, like we did with India, like we did with Pakistan. If we preclude all responses other than war, then that's what we will have, is war, if we wake up one day and find that they are. Even if they were preemptively bombed, there's still a chance that they get a nuclear weapon at some point in time. So I think some things are better left unsaid. It's sort of like in the presidential debates, when you get these hypothetical questions, announcing what you would do in every hypothetical situation is probably not a good idea for the leader of the free world, because really some things need to be unknown. I have said that all options should be on the table, and I do agree with that. but I also don't think we should be walking around with a swagger saying, you know, we'll drop a nuclear bomb on Tehran. I think that's reckless also. So there's certain things that need to be known but are better left unsaid at some time.
Very quickly, because we're almost out of time, where do you stand on U.S. drones targeting American citizens who are suspected of supporting al-Qaeda or being involved in terrorist plots, killing them without any judicial review?
I'm really troubled by it. The administration, there was a document leaked that says that an imminent threat doesn't have to be an immediate threat. Someone on my staff said, you know, only a bunch of lawyers could say that an imminent threat doesn't have to be immediate. So I'm concerned about a bunch of people from the executive branch sitting around at a table with flashcards saying, you want to kill him? What do you think? Should we kill him, or what do you think? You know, one of the people that was targeted and killed was a 16-year-old boy. Now, he was related to somebody who was a terrorist and who was an enemy of the country and who renounced his country. Even the people who do that, I would try them for treason. I would make it a pretty quick trial, but I would have some judge reviewing this, whether it's a FISA court or some kind of judge. If it has to be secret, it could be FISA. But ideally, if you're a traitor, let's try you for treason. If you're not going to show up, try, and there will likely be a conviction. But let's don't just have a bunch of people from the executive branch going through flashcards. I don't think that killing someone without any judicial oversight is an appropriate activity for the president.
Senator Paul, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.